The judge had barely raised his gavel when Evelyn stood up, her voice trembling yet fierce. I am not losing my mind. I am losing my son, the boy I gave my life for, who now dares to call me unfit to live with my own dignity. The courtroom gasped. Daniel looked away, his eyes filled with guilt, as everyone realized this wasn't just a case about money. It was a case about betrayal, love, and justice. Before we begin, I invite you to subscribe, so you won't miss the story that might brighten your day. Mrs. Evelyn, you don't need to prepare anything. We got married yesterday. Only really special people are invited. Laura's voice came through the receiver, soft but cutting like a knife. I was stunned. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. Evelyn, 69 years old, the one who paid their rent for 3 years, the one who bought every piece of furniture, the one who filled their refrigerator when there was nothing left to eat. And yet today, on my own son's wedding day, I am not special enough to be there. The phone in my hand suddenly felt heavy, like 1,000 pounds pressing down on it. I could clearly hear the cheerful laughter coming from behind Laura, the clinking of glasses, the clicking of cameras. There was no place for me in that noise. Daniel, my only son, stood there in the living room, but his eyes avoided mine. That bowed head hurt more than 1,000 harsh words. I glanced at the pale blue dress in my closet, the one I had saved up all summer. I had imagined wearing it to my son's wedding, standing next to him in our one family photo, but it was all an illusion. The dress was now silent testimony to a cruel truth. I had never been part of his happiness. Years ago, when my husband died in an accident, I thought my life would collapse too. But Daniel was too young. He needed me. So I put all my energy into working, staying up all night, wiping tables in restaurants, cleaning hotel rooms, packing every penny in an old wooden box. I believed that as long as I raised it, I would not be lonely in my old age. But now when I heard Laura say special person, I understood all those sacrifices were in exchange for a marginal position. In their eyes, I was never a mother, never a relative. I was just a walking wallet. I put the phone down. My hands were shaking, but inside a strange fire was burning. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just sat still, letting every memory, every coin, every drop of sweat I had spent gather into a storm. They thought I would continue to be patient. They were wrong. That day I was no longer the gentle mother they knew. I became a different Evelyn, an Evelyn who knew that her silence was something they had taken advantage of for too long. And from that moment on, I swore, this time I will never let anyone look down on me again. A week after the terrible phone call, my house seemed to have fallen into an endless void. Every morning, when the sunlight filtered through the curtains, I would see the pale blue dress hanging in the closet, silent as a ghost. I had thought I would wear it on my son's wedding day to take the only family photo together. Now it was just a bare piece of cloth, reminding me that I had never been special in their eyes. At night, I lay still on the old bed, listening to the ticking of the clock. Questions kept gnawing at my mind. Where did I go wrong? Did I love too much? Or did a mother's sacrifice become a burden that they despise? But then another call came. This time Laura's voice was no longer arrogant, no longer smirking. It was trembling, urgent like a drowning person clutching at a straw. Mrs. Evelyn, the rent, the landlord is demanding it. He said if we don't pay it this week, we'll be kicked out. Did you forget to transfer the money? I was silent, only hearing my heart pounding in my chest. In that moment, each piece of memory played back like a film. The image of me holding a small bag of rice, eating rice with fish sauce to save money to send to Daniel when he is unemployed. I hurriedly canceled my vacation with my old friends so I could transfer money to them to pay the electricity bill. The image of me saving up every penny of my meager pension, then secretly putting a few $100s in an envelope so Daniel could buy an engagement ring, a wedding dress, and even the honeymoon that I thought I would witness on the wedding day. I cut off the last joys of my life just to build my son's happiness. And now, after they cruelly left me out of the wedding, they shamelessly called to ask for money, as if nothing had happened. I took a deep breath, my voice strangely calm. Laura, I told you, I only help truly special people. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Laura hurriedly said, her voice pretending to be sobbing, "We've always been special to you. You're like a second mother to me." I smiled faintly, an unhappy smile. I had heard such things over the years. Whenever Laura needed money, she called me Mom. Whenever Daniel was short of money to pay his debts, he murmured thanks to me. But when I needed a place at my own son's wedding, I was just extra. That night, I sat at the dinner table, took out a pen and paper, and did the math. I needed to look at the numbers to see how much I had been taken advantage of. Rent, over $21,600 for 3 years. Furniture, sofa, dining table, bed, refrigerator, $7,500. Holiday, birthday, Christmas gifts, at least $3,000. Hospital charges for Laura's short-term hospitalization, $1,200. Wedding dress, wedding rings, honeymoon, $5,000. In total, more than $38,000. A huge sum for a widow like me, the money my husband and I had saved our whole lives, the money that should have helped me live comfortably in my old age, or at least fix the leaky roof every time it rained. But now I look at that number and realize, all I got in return was contempt, ingratitude, betrayal. I put my head down on the table. Tears welled up, falling onto the numbers, smearing them into black ink. But this time I wasn't crying because I was weak. I was crying because I was choking, because I realized I had let motherhood become a one-sided transaction. Then I stood up and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was old and wrinkled, my hair was streaked with gray, but in my eyes I saw a different light, the light of determination. The next morning I went straight to the bank. Mr. Klein, the longtime account manager, looked at me in surprise when I said, "Cancel all automatic transfers to Daniel." He blinked, surprised. "Mrs. Evelyn, these payments have been as regular as the sun rising for the past 3 years. Is something wrong?" I smiled, my voice calm but firm. "Yes, Mr. Klein, I just remembered that I am also a special person, and from now on I will live for myself." I thought that was the end of it. But a few days later, Daniel and Laura showed up at my door. They didn't bring any apologies. Instead, their faces were filled with anger, and the accusations that came out of their mouths made my blood run cold. 3 days after I stopped the payments, one gloomy afternoon, there was a loud knock on the door. Before I could even step out, I heard the jingle of keys. My heart sank. They still had the keys to my house. I had given them to them in the naive belief that whenever needed, my son would always come back. The door swung open. Daniel walked in first, his face grim, followed by Laura, her eyes blazing. They walked straight into the house as if it belonged to them. "Mom, what's going on?" Daniel asked, his voice full of reproach. "Why did you cut off the money without saying a word? Do you know how miserable we are?" I sat still, looking at my son, the baby I used to hold, now tall but with a strange appearance. "Miserable?" I curled my lips and smiled faintly. "For the past 3 years, who paid your rent, who bought your bed, paid your bills, and paid for your hospital bills? Who do you call that miserable?" Laura quickly interrupted, her voice feigning gentleness. "Mrs. Evelyn, we just need a little more time. Daniel is busy with work, and I am still not well after months of stress. You can't leave your family alone right now." I looked her straight in the eye. Family? On the wedding day I was left out, but when it came to money I was family. "Laura," I said slowly, "family is not a wallet to withdraw money from whenever you want. Family is where people share happiness, but Daniel's greatest happiness, the children, deliberately left me out." Daniel clenched his fists and said harshly, "You're making a big deal out of this. The wedding was just a small ceremony. Laura just wanted privacy. We still care about you." I smiled sadly. Care? When I was in the hospital with the flu, no one came to visit. When it was my birthday, there was only a small cake that I bought myself. Their care only appeared when my account was in their pockets. "If you care," I said, my voice low but sharp as a knife, "why did I have to find out about your wedding day through social media? Why did the dress I bought sit in the closet, never once seeing the wedding lights?" Laura paused, then her voice became cold. "Mrs. Evelyn, you are showing signs of erratic behavior. Cutting off money suddenly, saying extreme things. Maybe you need a psychological checkup. Are you sure you are still sane enough to manage money?" Those words sent a chill down my spine. I realized they wanted more than just money. If I was declared insane, everything I owned would fall into their legal hands. A heavy silence fell. I took a deep breath, then stood up. My eyes looked straight, my voice no longer trembling. "Get out of my house, immediately." Daniel froze. Laura opened her mouth, but I pointed to the door. "You're forgetting something. I still have the right to decide my own life, and that right, no one can take it away." The air froze. After a few seconds, Daniel angrily dragged his wife out of the house. The door slammed shut, leaving me alone in silence. I sat down in my chair, my hands still shaking, but a strange feeling rose in my heart, relief. For the first time in years, I dared to stand up for myself. I thought that was the end of it. But just 3 days later, an envelope from the court appeared in my mailbox. Inside was a petition. Daniel and Laura were formally requesting a psychiatric evaluation of me. They decided to take a more sinister step, to overthrow me and take everything. When I held the court order in my hand, I was stunned. The words were clearly printed. Request for psychiatric evaluation of Evelyn Ward, 69, filed by son and daughter-in-law. I sat down on the chair, my hands shaking. It turned out that my 30 years of motherly love in their eyes was nothing more than a greedy plan to turn me into a lunatic so they could take everything. That night I couldn't sleep. The wind whistling outside the window was like a mocking laugh of fate. I looked around the house, every brick, every picture on the wall was a memory of my husband and I building it. And now my son wanted to take it away. I could stay silent as I have for the past 3 years. But this time, if I don't stand up, I will lose everything: my home, my dignity. The next morning, I went to the local attorney's office. Mr. Weber, a man in his 50s with keen eyes, listened to my story. He didn't interrupt, just nodded, occasionally taking notes. When I said the part about psychiatric evaluation with a trembling voice, he put down his pen and looked straight at me. Mrs. Evelyn, you are perfectly sane, I believe you, but we need evidence. The only thing that can protect you is the truth on record. For the first time in days, I saw a flash of light. Mr. Weber guided me to begin. Collect financial documents, all transfers, bills, receipts for the past 3 years. Contact witnesses, neighbors, friends, even bank employees who have seen me lucid and in control. Independent medical examination, a reputable doctor will assess my cognitive abilities to disprove any claims of insanity. I went home and searched through every drawer. Receipts, withdrawal slips, purchase orders, I kept them all. I am a careful person, and this time my carefulness became a weapon. In the afternoon, I stopped by the grocery store near my house. Cynthia, the store owner and longtime neighbor, looked at me worriedly. Evelyn, I've noticed Daniel and Laura being strange lately. They're always talking loudly about you in the parking lot. You should be careful. I smiled wryly and told her briefly about the petition from the court. Cynthia's face turned red with anger. How shameless! You are the most sensible person I have ever known. I will testify for you whenever necessary. Her words choked me up. In that moment, I realized not everyone had turned their backs on me. There were still people who saw my true worth. The following days were busier than ever. I met with Dr. Moore, a smart and kind woman. She spent hours talking to me, testing my memory, reasoning, and financial management. When she finished, she took my hand. Mrs. Evelyn, your mind is clear, even more than many young people. I will write a report to confirm. They will not be able to frame you. I walked out of the clinic, took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. But the relief didn't last long. One evening, when I returned home, I found another envelope on my door. Inside were photocopies of prescriptions, along with accusations that I was hoarding pills without taking them, false evidence that I had a mental problem. I was stunned. Clearly, Daniel and Laura had gone further. They were willing to fabricate stories, even involving a familiar doctor to make up stories. I knew this battle would no longer be a family argument. This had become a life and death battle to protect my dignity and freedom. On the day of the trial, I sat in the cold wooden bench, my hands clasped tightly together. The room was large, the lights bright white, but I felt darker than any night I had ever experienced. In front of me was Daniel, my only son, my only biological son. He was dressed neatly in a suit, his face serious. People might mistake him for a dutiful son caring for his mother. But I knew that behind that facade was ambition and selfishness that had eroded away all that was left of maternal love. When the judge asked, Daniel stood up, his voice calm and chilling. My mother has been very erratic lately. She forgets to transfer money, she doubts everything, she cuts off contact. My wife and I are worried that she is no longer mentally sound enough to manage the property. I looked straight at him. Every word he said was like a knife stabbing into my heart. This was the child I had carried through the rainy nights, the child I had starved to give up food for. And now he could stand before a crowd, before a judge, and calmly accuse his mother. In that moment, I was no longer angry. I felt a deep pain, as if my motherhood had been torn to pieces in public. Attorney Weber gently touched my hand and whispered, "Remember, Mrs. Evelyn, your truth and your dignity will protect you." I stood up. My legs were shaking, but my voice rang out clearly, echoing throughout the room. "I may be old, I may be slower than before, but I am not crazy. I am not losing my mind. I still remember every day I worked hard to raise my son. I remember every penny I withdrew to pay off debts, to pay the rent, to buy the things he needed. And I remember most clearly the day of his wedding. I was not invited. I paused, taking a deep breath. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Daniel, you can lie to the world that your mother is insane. But in your heart, you know the truth. She has never been insane. She has only lost her innocence in believing that love can buy gratitude." The room fell silent. I saw Daniel roll his eyes, avoiding my gaze. His hands clenched as if he couldn't bear the truth. When Dr. Moore presented the results of my tests, which proved I was sane, I didn't feel elated. Instead, I felt a heavy heart. I had won the battle for justice, but in the battle for motherhood, I had lost everything. Because my greatest victory today is not keeping my wealth, but keeping my dignity. I sat down and whispered in my heart, "Son, I forgive you, but forgiveness does not mean I will continue to allow you to ruin my life. My love from now on stops here." Leaving the courthouse that day, I did not feel alone. I felt relieved because at last I had dared to set myself free. After the court day, I returned to the old house. The sunset spread over the tiled roof. The brilliant rays of light covering the porch seemed to say to me, "Evelyn, from now on you are truly free." I opened the door and walked in. There was no more frantic knocking, no more jingling of keys. There was just silence, and for the first time the silence wasn't scary. It was the silence of freedom. That evening I made a cup of tea and sat by the window. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about whether Daniel would pay the rent tomorrow, whether Laura would have enough money for her medicine. I didn't have to wake up in the middle of the night to check my bank account. All the invisible shackles had fallen off my shoulders. The following days, I began to rewrite my life schedule. In the morning, I went for a walk with Cynthia, my neighbor who had defended me. We talked and laughed like two girls in their 20s. In the afternoon, I joined the art club that I had abandoned for 15 years because I was busy supporting Daniel. Putting pen to paper, I realized that I still had a whole world to explore. I repaired the roof and planted more flowers in the yard. Every time a flower blooms, I feel like I am also blooming a little more. One afternoon, as I was going to the market, someone recognized me and whispered, "You are Evelyn, the one who won the family case, right? I heard the story. You are very brave." I smiled. No, I didn't see myself as a hero. I was just an ordinary mother who had learned a lesson too late. Love is not blind sacrifice. True love needs to be put in the right place, starting with loving yourself. Every now and then I hear from Daniel and Laura. They've had to leave their luxury apartment and move to a smaller place. Laura has to find a job. Daniel is struggling with debt. I'm not happy to hear that, but I'm not hurt anymore. I just hope that adversity will teach them what my generosity never could. The value of work and the importance of gratitude. One evening, I wrote in my diary, "Today I understood justice in the courtroom can be bought, but justice in the heart cannot be taken away. I lost my son, or rather the illusion of motherhood. But I found myself again, and that is the greatest victory." I closed my diary and looked outside. The night wind was cool and the moon was bright. I told myself, "Tomorrow I will go further, maybe a short trip, maybe a new class. Most importantly, I will live not for anyone else, but for myself." I laughed softly. For the first time in years, it wasn't forced. It was the smile of a woman who had lost everything, but had also found the most precious thing, dignity and freedom. My story ends not with revenge, but with a message. Parents' love is not an endless wallet. Whoever takes it for granted will lose the most precious thing, and whoever knows how to cherish it will be protected by that love for life. When I look back on my life, I realize one thing: love without boundaries is not love at all. It's sacrifice that slowly erases your own dignity. I gave until I had nothing left, believing that silence and patience would one day be rewarded. But silence only teaches others that your voice doesn't matter. What I learned is this: respect must be demanded before it is denied. You cannot pour from an empty cup. By protecting your worth, you are not being selfish. You are showing others how to value you and how to value themselves. Now I want to leave you with a question. Have you ever given so much that you forgot to protect your own heart? Think about it, because sometimes the greatest act of love is learning to say no. If you find this story meaningful and want to help us share these important values, please subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next inspiring story. Together, we can build a strong community full of potential and a spirit of justice.